Hello and welcome to Fix It, the podcast by the Fix Media, where we unpack media insights and take you behind the scenes of editorial decisions, strategy, and innovation. I'm your host Anton Protsiuk, senior editor of the Fix Media. Before we dive in, please subscribe, follow, and if you like what you hear, support us at thefix.media. So, in today's episode, we will be talking about what happens when classic investigative journalism meets the world of TikTok and creator culture. More newsrooms are partnering with people who have built their own audiences online instead of just asking readers to come to their websites, and it raises a lot of big and interesting questions. Can this make serious journalism stronger, and what's the path to financial sustainability here? So, to explore all of that, we are joined by James West, who is executive editor of Mother Jones, which is a non-profit newsroom in the United States known for its investigative and long-form reporting on politics and other topics. Mother Jones is almost 50 years old, but now they are also experimenting with working directly with news creators, which is what we'll be discussing today. We will talk about why Mother Jones is doing it, how these partnerships look in practice, and what it might mean for the future. So, James, welcome to the Fixes podcast.
So good to be here. Great to see you, Anton. Thank you.
So, to start, for listeners who are not familiar with Mother Jones, well, how would you describe what you do and what kind of stories you are known for?
Yeah, well, Mother Jones is, as you said, a nearly 50-year nonprofit news organization. Right now, we have record subscriber base for the physical magazine. We also have a thriving social web and digital presence, something like 4.2 million social followers uh, for Mother Jones. We have a thriving uh, video presence that we'll talk about today as well on your show. And we're also a co-publication with the radio show Reveal, which is from the Center for Investigative Reporting, our parent organization. That was after a merger last year that joined our newsrooms together. So now we do that as well. We're on over 500 radio stations around the United States with an investigative news hour that tackles a new investigation every week. So when you look around, we've kind of got a thumb in every pie. We've got a magazine, we've got digital presence, we've got a radio show, we've got a podcast. We also have a film and television unit as well. So my job is sort of trying to spin all these plates, keep everybody happy, and do some great journalism along the way, hopefully.
There's some solid multi-platform journalism here. And can you give us a sense of your scale? How big is your team and how big is your audience?
Yeah, well, the entire organization is, over 110, 120 people right now, and the newsroom is over 70. So we're not small, but we're not big. Um, and our audience is, I mean, I love our audience, Anton. What can I say? They are super diverse. They are right across the country. We have a lot of nurses, teachers, professionals, people in red states, people in blue states, um, coastal, interior, regional, kind of everywhere. And when we do our sort of landmark muckraking investigations, people turn to us for that kind of independent, no holds barred, no billionaires looking over our shoulder. We report to no one but the audience, and so we get a lot of audience support for what we do, which is critical to our nonprofit mission.
So I wanted to dwell on this non-profit part for a moment. In everyday terms, have you been a non-profit newsroom shapes how you work and how you monetize, how you pay for your journalism?
Yeah, look, I think being a nonprofit newsroom has been essential to um, our success, actually. You look around the media right now, and all sorts of mergers and acquisitions are taking place that are making the competitive field even narrower and more beholden to big money. And those are exactly the kind of organizations that are caving in the front of authoritarianism, creeping authoritarianism right now. So independence, true independence, is really, I believe, the coin of the realm in in media right now in the United States. Um, but we've been that from the beginning. So we have a credibility and a reputation and a brand that people know and people trust. And I think that is probably the biggest thing that other newsrooms want. Um, and so it informs everything that we do, really, and gives us a sense of responsibility because we know exactly who our quote unquote shareholders are, and they are the readers, viewers, and listeners of all of our different pieces of journalism, not a corporate board structure that is, holding us hostage to some of the bigger commercial forces in the United States right now. So that doesn't quite answer your question, but it's the world that we're immersed in every day.
Yeah, and in practical terms, does most of your revenue come from readers? How are you monetized as an organization?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have the exact breakdown for you, Anton, but we are largely a philanthropically funded nonprofit. So everywhere from readers to members to charitable giving. We also obviously monetize our work through advertising as well. But yes, we are chiefly beholden to our the people that support us charitably.
Let's talk about what role video plays in your journalism. Can you give us a sense of your video operations and your priorities here?
Yes, we've been building a video operation at Mother Jones and CIR for over a decade now, and we've seen so many changes in that time, Anton. We began by basically turning investigations into video as companion pieces as a way to start. But as these platforms have evolved, and you yourself know this, and your audience know this, that your whole world is in your hand now in the form of vertical video. And I spend probably too many hours scrolling on TikTok and Instagram, um, following trends and consuming media that way. And we've seen in recent years explosive growth on that front. We've got a very small team of dedicated and very talented media video producers who are working on putting journalism into this short form video format. And, you know, just looked up the numbers, and we're not even at the end of this year, and we're kind of cruising towards 60 million views across all of our different video platforms right now, which um, is sort of staggering to think about um, when you compare that to TV viewership. Um, you know, on a regular night on primetime TV, you've got, I don't know, around of 5 million to 10 million. Your listeners will correct me on that. On a primetime show, here we're getting millions of viewers every week on the work that we're producing. Plus, I think it is reflective of a real priority for any newsroom, which is to find audiences wherever they exist. We can't be in the business of only narrow casting to a particular kind of reader or audience. We really have to hustle, hustle, hustle to find any eyeball, any eardrum that we can give our work to. And that means adapting sometimes to formats that are emerging and evolving in real time. So it's been a great adventure so far, and we're sort of dialing ourselves even more into this space, Anton, than ever before.
And how does it look on the ground in terms of specific platforms you are investing in? As I understand, you are making a big push towards short video, right? Short vertical video on TikTok. Can you maybe talk a bit more about what specific platforms you are using and for what ends?
We're taking a everything, everywhere, all at once approach to publishing video right now and seeing what works. I think anybody who says that they have the secret to making this kind of work is fooling you, because the algorithms, as you and your listeners probably know, are so capricious and sometimes so arbitrary that something sticks on one platform, it doesn't stick on the other. So recently, we had a piece up about this couple who have Down syndrome, who have their own podcast, and they were reacting to Medicaid cuts from the Trump administration affecting some of the programs that they really value, and they've sort of gone viral, and they're extremely sweet couple who do this podcast. The video, you know, went sort of viral on one platform and didn't go super viral on another platform, but together we've made a big impact across a variety of different platforms. And we see that almost with every video, honestly. Sometimes we'll get a million views on a long 14-minute piece about surveillance on TikTok, which is known primarily as a short form video platform. Um, and then it doesn't go that well on a different platform. So it really just depends. And we are, like I think most people, in a learning pattern, um, working out what works, pivoting to new formats, and really putting experimentation at the heart of everything that we do.
Like in the episode. Sounds like we're a great match, and we couldn't be happier. If you'd like to strengthen our bond, support us by donating or joining our membership program. That's it. No more interruptions. Back to the episode.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and this the note about a wonk video hitting it on TikTok is also really interesting. Do you maybe have a few other observations or tips of around what specifically has worked for you in recent months?
Yeah, look, TikTok especially is one of those very mercurial platforms where you just don't really know what works and what doesn't work. Um, I think that's because its algorithm is so sensitive to what the actual user is inputting and swiping. Um, and volume seems to be one of the main issues with TikTok. You really have to keep it fed with a lot of content to really see the results. Uh, YouTube, on the other hand, for us, is more of a prestige type platform where people are really sitting and watching longer form. But having said that, YouTube Shorts, which is their sort of answer to TikTok, is also becoming much more competitive for us. I'm just going to quickly pull up some statistics here that that I pulled up. I mean, recently we had, I don't know, something like 8 million, over 8 million views for a short form video, which basically compared um, President Biden's reaction to a tragedy and President Trump's reaction to a tragedy and stacked them vertically in a vertical video. This was after the um, assassination of Charlie Kirk, the far right figure. Um, and that was a short video. It was turned around very quickly, um, and explosive results. Right, on the other end of the spectrum, we had um, a piece about a whistleblower who worked for a U.S. Aid organization in Gaza. Um, that much longer video, which required a lot more on the ground reporting, journalism, investigation, that also got about 3 million views overall. So it really depends, and I think we're in the business of matching the story to the story format and to duration. I've now sort of given up trying to work out which durations are going to be the best kind for any one story. It almost has to speak back to you, not to get too woo about this, but uh, matching the story to duration, it almost is a case by case basis.
Going to the topic of specifically working with creator journalists, right? Specifically partnering with news creators. Can you talk a bit more about that, about your about this recent push you have been doing? How does it fit within your larger video strategy, and how do you think about this program?
Yeah, zooming out, Anton, I think, gone are the days where anybody sits in front of the television with their family and, looks at a news reader in a studio as the voice of authority or the gatekeeper over their over their information. Instead, they've got a second screen up and it's in their hand, and they're looking at people who are often closer to their age, in their own worlds, sometimes in their own kitchens, who are telling them things about the world. And those people have big audiences and they have authority with those audiences. And so, why not try to recruit people who are already doing the work um, of connecting with audiences, building trust with audiences? They may not know what journalism really is or how it works, but they're doing journalism. They may not know it, right? They're telling stories about the world to their audiences. And that fundamentally is the sort of definition of what we do as well. And so, my whole theory of the case is that if you can find people who are speaking the language of these platforms and have already built audiences there, why not tap them and see if they want to work with us? This was sort of an outgrowth of a strategy where we put a filmmaker in our newsroom several years ago and sort of had them impart a lot of different skills and insights from the documentary film world into what we were doing. And now you know, currently working with a creator called Chris Vasquez, who used to work at the Washington Post and the Marshall Project, and has this real gift for turning complex stories about, in this case, healthcare, into these really entertaining, often less than 1 minute skits about how how healthcare is costs are spiraling. And so that's makes my job fun, actually. and and he's having fun, and I think it helps us experiment with form and format, and communicating with audiences wherever they are, taking in this stuff. So that's just one example, but we've been sort of building this out over time and looking to really work with more and more um, freelance creators who may be interested in learning what it is to be hooked up to a traditional, in many ways, legacy newsroom.
That's really interesting. I would love to go into the weeds of how your cooperation is structured, but first, are there maybe other examples of specific creators you either have already worked with or topics, directions you are exploring for the future?
Yeah, one of my close colleagues, Garrison Hayes, joined us a couple of years ago, and he is a fascinating guy. He is an exceptionally talented communicator of stories about forgotten parts of American history, particularly when it comes to race. And he also has insights about the role of religion in the United States and politics. He himself having been a youth pastor, and his story is fascinating. You know, during COVID and beyond, he learned that he was really great at live streaming, and began posting his own stories about that, and communicating and building his own audience. And we saw it and was like, "That's cool." Here's a guy who's really communicating with his audiences, and we started working together. And he's won 2 Webby Awards since, and recently a video about the ways in which the again Charlie Kirk assassination, the memorial for Charlie Kirk, really crossed streams um, of a funeral and a kind of Christian nationalist revival rally, and how the collapse of church and state has become a fundamental aspect of this administration. So that's another example where he has a kind of unique expertise and a unique voice, and is doing journalism, which I think a lot of creators are doing, and they may not even know it.
Yes. So, can you walk us through the way these relationships are structured from a business perspective? Are you cooperating with creators as freelancers who actually owns the intellectual property they're creating, and so on?
Yeah, we have basically a freelance model. We also have a staff model. Um, Garrison is now on staff, which is a constant delight for me. And we're also working with somebody like Chris in a freelance capacity. He's who I mentioned before, who's doing a special feature series on healthcare. And what we try to do is not really be hung up about um, people publishing on their own platforms. We want that because we want the work to get to the biggest possible audience. And you and your listeners may be familiar that the tools, the platforms that we're using are making this more and more easy to do. So, for example, on Instagram, there's a collaborate feature that publishes videos directly into both feeds. Um, and this is increasingly true of TikTok and of YouTube as well. So these platforms are making it easier to do that. And I think like the big goal is to make sure that we're sharing that understanding and sharing the ability to get to as many people as humanly possible.
You've mentioned a couple of times this interesting point that creators are maybe already doing journalism, but they might not even know it, right? But here also comes the challenge of how to bridge these creator voices with journalistic standards. How do you think about that? Do you have to do, I don't know, some kind of basic journalistic training for the creators you're working with, or how are you ensuring adherence to journalistic
Yeah,
standards?
that's a great question, Anton. And let me put in a pitch to creators. I mean, when we are working with creators, we give them kind of wraparound support. Um, they have access to editors, they have access to fact checkers and researchers, and they also have access to our legal team. Um, and so, one of the one of the great things about being a creator is that you're kind of independent out there in the world. One of the bad things about it is you feel kind of lonely and you're by yourself as you're making this content and sometimes publishing into the void. Whereas working with a place like us, it's collaborative and people are given feedback, giving feedback, and we're always working on making sure that the journalism is bulletproof. And so that's definitely different from how probably a lot of creators are working, but it's the value proposition that we certainly offer to, well, any freelancer, to be honest, but particularly creators at the moment who might get something out of reaching our audiences as much as we get something out of reaching theirs.
And obviously, news publishers cooperating, working with news creators is a larger trend. That's more and more publishers are doing. Are there any? On the one hand, I want to ask you about whether there are any specific examples you get inspiration from, uh, any other publishers you're looking towards, and then I would also love to ask you about any lessons you can share for other publishers from the journey you've already had.
That's a great question. I'll take the last part first. Um, I mean, far be it from me to give advice to other publishers, but if I were to, I would say take the risk. Um, I think sometimes newsrooms can feel like fortresses a little bit, like you're sort of throwing stuff over the wall at the audience and then sort of retreating back behind the wall. But the most interesting stuff for me is stuff where you're kind of experimenting beyond the wall of journalism and trying to see what's next. Um, because those that are sort of too precious are gonna realize that some of these audiences they haven't started to build, and that's where kind of exciting audience growth is happening. So yeah, it's a bit of a risk and a bit of an experiment, but it's been really fun too. And I sort of strongly believe that there's enough bad stuff in the world going on that we should turn up to work and at least experiment and have some fun with what we're doing. in newsrooms. And then who am I admiring? I mean, gosh, my own TikTok algorithm is full of a rich variety of crazy and contradictory things. You know, everything from videos where rescue cows are getting scratched to my favorite musicians. The singer Robin just had a new song out, so that's now drenching my feed. But newsrooms who are doing great stuff. I mean, you know, you can't look past a place like the New York Times, which has sort of taken the lessons of vertical video and really tried to stitch it right into the heart of everything that they're doing. You'll notice on their website and their own app as well as social feeds, they're turning their own correspondence into video correspondence one by one by one by one. And you know, I would have no idea what they're seeing on the back end of that in terms of numbers, but you've got to think that um, it's great. I mean, I love, you know, I'm a huge fan of the BBC in the UK, and I love their TikTok and Instagram presence in particular. Um, there's so many good examples around. Um, and you know public radio and television, which is in the states under attack, also do kind of incredible things on social media with their reach. And sometimes people are sitting down and watching a full, you know, PBS documentary on these social platforms as well. That happened to us recently, where a long form documentary piece that we co-produced with PBS was watched in full tons and tons and tons of times on some of these social platforms. So it's not just finding new formats and short formats, it's almost looking at the old formats too and working out what works and giving it a go.
And dwelling on the New York Times example, one of the things they're doing is also embedding short video in their own platforms, right? So they are embedding short videos on their website homepage. They've just launched their short video tab in their app, and I was I was going to ask you about how do you think about this within your video strategy about reliance on external platforms versus trying to get your audience to visit your own and operated channels.
It sort of goes back to our conversation about it being a non-profit, and we don't have a paywall of any kind on our website because we want to make sure that our journalism is viewed far and wide. And that's not no shade on the New York Times, but it's a very different business model, right? They're a subscriber business model. They need to grow their own subscriber base for the business model to work, which means really investing in their own platforms and making them as resilient as possible. And that's fantastic. They've done an extraordinary job at doing that. You know, we are minuscule compared to the operations of the New York Times or the BBC or some of these other, you know, giants in the world. And so we've got less resources to put into building a sort of app like that. And honestly, a bit less incentive too, because we truly do want the work to reach as many possible humans at any one time. And that means using the platforms that have already been built for this purpose. You know, we why not is sort of my position. Um, and of course, it comes with some of the vagaries that we were talking about before, which is that the platforms can be black boxes. They're also owned by other people. We don't have control over them. Having said that, we put a lot of effort into making sure that we have human relationships at some of these platforms that can, you know, that we can go to if something breaks or speak to about different stories, and that often helps. Um, but yes, you're right. I would also love a giant app that delivers straight to a loyal audience, but you know we have that. Um, on some of these other platforms too. So um, oh, let a thousand flowers bloom in terms of business models, I
Yeah,
think.
definitely. So if you look a couple of years out into the future, what's your best case vision? What's your plan for how to develop specifically your cooperation with independent creators? Like what is the goal? What is the long term goal you've set for yourself, and what's the best case vision you would like to achieve?
I would love to discover and work with the next generation of communicators, of news communicators who really understand this medium, who are out there hustling for audiences, and who share the vision that journalism can come in many different formats, and that it's almost platform agnostic. Let's start with good journalism. Let's start with the ability to communicate, and we can go from there. And I think the best case scenario, the thing that would future proof us, whatever happens, is not necessarily being wed to one particular form of journalism, but making sure that all of our eggs aren't in one basket, that we are working with the best producers, the best journalists, so that whatever format that we're making, um, it's finding an audience. If the algorithms go dark, or if, I don't, God forbid, TikTok stops existing or something, that at least we have these other outlets and formats to play with. And I think that some of these skills are transferable, right? Like, I'm not saying anything new here. I imagine that everybody in sort of my position at a TV station is also looking at this new crop of communicators and trying to work out, hey, who would be good on TV? Um, who would be good on radio? Who would be good in print? It's a it, having the kind of ability to see people on your phone and imagine them as part of your newsroom is sort of the revolutionary part. But basically, what I'm talking about is just, I don't know, spotting talent and wanting to work with them. Nothing more complicated than that.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about the growing role of video, and on the contrary, about the role of your non-video work. Right, there is this growing trend that video is becoming more and more important. Everything is converging on becoming television. Podcasts are becoming videos and TV shows. How do you see the role of your other products, maybe your text reporting, your print publication, in this world where more and more resources and attention get redirected towards video?
Yeah, on the one hand, you can't ignore the new platforms, ignore them at your peril. But on the other hand, everything is driven by the fundamentals of good reporting and good journalism and good editing. And for a newsroom like ours, that's the top of the funnel concern. If we get that right, we can get a lot of other things hopefully right. Um, and that won't go away, I don't think. That it's very difficult for an AI chatbot to call the mayor of New York City on a deadline and ask for a quote, because I mean, they're not human. They don't know how to do that. Uh, plus the mayor isn't going to give you a good quote. So there'll always be a fundamental need for um, real reporting that pushes people to tell you stuff, to get that stuff on the record, and to do enterprising and creative investigative work. That's always going to be the bread and butter of what we do. Um, but it's not an either or. It's not a binary here. Like, once we have that material, how do we present it? Who do we work with to bring that story to life? Um, that's the sort of interesting and evolving question at the heart of this conversation that I'm sure will be different if we talk again in a year's time.
So that's great. Thank you so much, James, for this conversation. I think there were a lot of interesting insights for our listeners to get inspired, to maybe borrow some of the tactics we discussed. And if there is anything else we haven't discussed yet, but you would like to draw the attention of our listeners, we still have a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I would just end it by saying that, again, there's sort of a lot going on in the world. Journalism is under attack on a lot of fronts, financially, politically, and in the minds of a distrustful public. But there's a lot of excitement going on as well in terms of the ways that we can tell stories. And that's the stuff that gives me optimism um, and purpose is, waking up and getting to work with a super creative team who really knows how to do this stuff and very talented at it. And what better way to to kind of deal with the slings and arrows of whatever's happening in the news than alongside a really fantastic team of dedicated professionals. So there's definitely hope and purpose in even when it sounds like newsrooms are under attack around the world. This is a kind of very fun part of my job.
That's really inspiring. And on this inspiring note, thank you again, James, for joining us.
Great to chat to you guys.
That's all for today. Thank you for being with us. Follow The Fix, subscribe to The Fixed podcast, and if you want to help us grow, please head over to thefix.media and join our membership family.